Before we begin, tell me in the comments where you are listening from. Maybe you are carrying wisdom from someone who is no longer with you. Maybe you are searching for guidance that feels deeper than what the modern world offers, or maybe you remember a grandparent who seemed to know something about life in a way you are only beginning to understand now. This story is deeply personal, is about a prayer my grandmother taught me when I was only 7 years old, a prayer I dismissed as nothing more than childhood superstition, a prayer I forgot for decades until I rediscovered it in the darkest period of my adult life, and from that moment on, it became the foundation for every decision I ever made. Most people know me for building companies, launching rockets, or chasing impossible goals, but what they do not know is that behind every leap into the unknown, behind every choice where I had to decide between the safe path and the risky one, there was a simple prayer, a prayer whispered by a woman who never had formal education, who never learned to read or write, but who somehow carried a wisdom that went deeper than any business textbook or leadership seminar. I was 7 years old, staying at my grandmother's small house in Pretoria in the year 1978. She was already in her 70s, a woman who had lived through 2 world wars, through economic collapse, through personal tragedies that would have broken most people. But when I think of her, I do not remember someone weighed down by hardship. I remember peace. Her house was simple: old wooden floors that creaked when you walked across them, curtains that let in the golden South African sunset, the smell of bread she had baked that day still lingering in the air. It was not a big place, but to me, it felt like the safest place in the world. She had a routine every single evening after dinner. Once the dishes were washed and neatly put away, she would sit in her old wooden chair by the window, and there, without fail, she would pray. Not loud, dramatic prayers, not the kind you hear in churches where people raise their voices and wave their hands. No, hers were quiet, intimates. If she were having a conversation with someone she trusted more than anyone else, she simply called him the Almighty. I was a curious kid. I asked questions about everything, and one night, after watching her whisper in the stillness, I finally asked, "Grandma, what are you saying when you sit there so quietly?" She looked at me with that soft smile, the kind of smile that carried more authority than any CEO I have ever met. "I am asking for guidance, child," she said. "I am asking to be shown the right path." I frowned. "But what if God does not answer?" I asked with the blunt honesty that only a child can have. She did not dismiss me. She did not laugh at the question. She just smiled again, a little wider this time. "Oh, he always answers, Elon," she said. "But sometimes we are too busy talking to listen." That night, she taught me her prayer. She began slowly, carefully, as if each word carried weight, and she asked me to repeat after her, "Dear God, help me to see what you see, to love what you love, and to do what you would have me do. Give me the courage to follow where you lead, even when I cannot see the whole path, and help me to trust that your plan is better than mine." Amen. 26 words, that was it. At the time, it felt like nothing more than a bedtime ritual. I did not understand it. I did not feel any great power in it. Oh me, it was just something nice we said before going to sleep. I could not have known that those 26 words carried everything I would one day need to navigate some of the hardest choices of my life. But even as a child, I noticed something about her. When she prayed, she was not begging, she was not desperate, she was not using prayer as a way to demand answers. She was peaceful, she was calm. She seemed certain that she was being heard, and that certainty was something I did not understand then, but I would never forget. Looking back, I realize now that this was the very beginning of a lesson I would only understand decades later, that the deepest wisdom often comes in the simplest form, and that sometimes the most powerful truths are handed to us not in boardrooms, not in books, not in speeches, but in whispers from those who love us unconditionally. At 7 years old, I could not see it, but that night in that little house in Pretoria, with my grandmother's voice guiding me line by line, the foundation was laid for everything that would come later in my life. As I grew older, the prayer slipped from my memory. School began to demand my focus. Then came university. Then the long, lonely years of building companies that almost collapsed before they could stand. Life moved quickly, and I told myself I was too busy for childhood rituals. Too busy for quiet moments of reflection. Too busy to remember the 26 words that once made my grandmother glow with peace. I was in my 20s when the first heavy storm of life hit me. I had left South Africa with almost nothing, chasing an education and a dream in America. I worked long nights, slept on the floor of a rented office, and lived off instant noodles because there was no money for anything else. Most people remember the stories of PayPal, Tesla, and SpaceX as tales of genius strategy or impossible risk-taking asterisk. But what they do not know is that underneath all of it was a young man terrified of failure, exhausted by pressure, and slowly drowning in doubt asterisk. There were moments when I felt crushed asterisk when the people closest to me betrayed my trust asterisk, when investors laughed at my ideas asterisk, when the press called me insane asterisk. I began to carry an invisible weight asterisk, a weight of expectation asterisk, a weight of loneliness asterisk, a weight of responsibility far heavier than I thought I could handle asterisk, and in the middle of that storm I forgot everything my grandmother had once whispered to me asterisk. I replaced her calm certainty with restless ambition asterisk. I replaced her quiet trust with endless worry asterisk. I replaced her simple prayer with complicated plans that never seemed enough asterisk. I thought I could control everything with intelligence, with strategy, with sheer willpower asterisk. But no matter how much I tried, the storms only grew louder asterisk, the failures grew sharper asterisk, and the emptiness inside me grew heavier asterisk. There were nights I could not sleep asterisk, nights when my chest felt tight as if the world were collapsing inward asterisk, nights when I questioned if anything I was building even mattered asterisk. And in those moments of silence I realized I had nothing to hold on to asterisk, no anchor asterisk, no compass asterisk, just the noise of my own thoughts asterisk. Looking back, I see now that this was the consequence of forgetting asterisk, forgetting that wisdom does not disappear just because we grow older asterisk, forgetting that sometimes the most important truths are the ones we abandon because we think we have outgrown them asterisk, forgetting that my grandmother had not been giving me. The year was 2008 and my world was collapsing. Tesla was weeks from bankruptcy. SpaceX had failed 3 rockets in a row. Investors were walking away, and the press had already written my obituary. I had put everything on the line, my money, my reputation, my health, and now it felt like the end was seconds away asterisk. One night, I sat alone in the office staring at the numbers on the screen that told me I had lost. I felt numb, my body heavy, my mind filled with noise. I thought about giving up. I thought about disappearing. Then out of nowhere in that darkness, I heard a voice, a memory. It was my grandmother. It was her voice, soft, steady, whispering those words I had not thought about in decades, the 26 words of the prayer asterisk. At first, I resisted. I told myself it was foolish, childish, too simple for the complexity of what I faced, but the memory kept echoing in my mind. Give me serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, wisdom to know the difference. I whispered the words slowly, then again, louder, then again, with a trembling kind of faith asterisk. Something shifted, not in the world outside, but in me. I realized I could not control the economy. I could not control the failures. I could not control what people thought. But I could control my next step. I could control whether I tried again or gave up. I could control whether I stood up or stayed broken asterisk. That night, I wrote down a plan, not a perfect plan, not a guaranteed plan, but one step I could take tomorrow. Then another, then another. I began to see the difference between what was in my hands and what was beyond them, and with that clarity came a strange calm, not comfort, not safety, but calm, the kind of calm that allows you to breathe while the storm still rages asterisk. The prayer had returned not as a childhood memory, but as a lifeline. I repeated it before every meeting, every phone call, every sleepless night, and slowly, piece by piece, Tesla survived, SpaceX survived, and I survived too asterisk. It was not the prayer alone that built rockets or cars, but it was the prayer that kept me standing long enough to see them succeed. It was the prayer that turned fear into focus, that turned despair into determination, that turned a man on the edge of collapse into a man still willing to try. Years have passed since those storms, and yet the prayer remains with me every single day. I whisper it when I wake, before the phone begins to ring, before the world starts demanding decisions. I whisper it when I face failure, when a launch explodes or a plan falls apart. I whisper it when success arrives, because even victories bring new battles. The 26 words have become a rhythm that guides me through chaos asterisk. What I have learned is simple: life will never stop testing us. There will always be storms louder than we think we can handle. There will always be moments when control slips from our hands. There will always be nights when fear feels stronger than hope. But the truth is, we do not need to control everything. We only need to know what belongs to us and what does not asterisk. The prayer teaches me that I cannot change the past. I cannot erase betrayal or failure. I cannot force people to believe in me or love me. I cannot make the world fair or easy, but I can choose to rise after Falling, I can choose to try again. After failing, I can choose to forgive instead of carrying poison. I can choose to focus on the steps that are mine to take asterisk. That is the secret of the prayer. It does not erase the storm. It does not promise comfort. It gives something greater. It gives clarity, and with clarity comes courage, and with courage comes peace asterisk. So now, when people ask me about success, about building rockets, or companies about surviving the impossible, I do not only talk about strategy or hard work. I tell them about my grandmother. I tell them about the nights I almost gave up. I tell them about the 26 words that carried me through asterisk. The prayer is not just a memory. It is my anchor, my compass, my shield, and perhaps it can be yours too.